What is life? What is life? Seriously, guys, what is life? What is brain? Insert generic greeting here. So in the past 4 years I've been traveling around 44 countries, which I would claim is quite a lot for the usual person. And during that time a lot of weird stuff has happened, and I've decided that I want to tell you about that. But since I don't really have much of an order of these stories, I'm just gonna give you a grab bag each month now and just tell you a few random things that aren't really connected to each other at all. A country that I happened to visit very early in my travels and that helped me a lot in maturing and becoming the traveler I am now is Poland, which is on spot number 8. I was there in the summer of 2016, so basically even before I started university. I was a very different person back then. I do love urban exploring, and when I went to northern Poland and stayed in the town of Gdansk, the guy I was staying with told me about a so-called Chłapalice castle, which isn't really a castle as far as I'm aware, but the story as I've been told goes like this. Apparently around the 90s this rich guy started building a castle in the woods. Now I've heard different stories about that. Some people have said he just had no money to finish it. Other people have said that the Polish government forbid him to build something in the woods and he had to abandon his project. But whatever happened, you now have this massive structure in the woods around the village of Chłapalice, which is kind of in the middle of nowhere. So I went to this other town to get there. And then I started walking into the woods, but it also was heavily raining, so everything was mud and I had to walk around that a lot, and I got somewhat lost. So at one point I absolutely had no idea where I was anymore. And after some more walking into the nothingness, I suddenly ended up seeing the walls that surround like the premises of the building. And once I got to the front entrance I saw there was actually a hole to go inside. It's a massive area with multiple floors that you can explore. It's very cool and atmospheric. And I have tons of pictures from this place. To me personally, this is one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. Moving on, at the very end of my Poland trip, I went to the village of Zakopane, which is in a mountainous area. Zakopane isn't that popular with certain travelers because it's very touristy, but from there you can get to very amazing places. And one day I spent around the area of Maskioko, which is tourist hotspot number 1. But the other day I went to this less known place where you have a ton of caves you can go into. And I started doing that and met this one Polish couple there. What I forgot to mention is that the cave I met these people at was one you had to basically crawl or crouch through. And there have been stories about supposed deaths that had happened because people didn't find their way back out. So that was an interesting place to make a new friendship at. And then we decided to go into another cave together where you had to climb down a very long ladder. Now the thing is, up until that point I've always been afraid of ladders. In the 19 years of my life, I never went onto a ladder, and now I was confronted with the situation where I had to go down. But it helped massively, because since then I can actually go onto ladders. And then we continued into another cave where it was normal cave walking for a while, and then there was this straight wall up that was completely wet, and you only had like steel ropes and you had to push yourself up that wall. There was no way going back because there were like a ton of people behind me, and it was the most scary thing I did at this point in my life because I so much felt like I'm gonna fall down. But it went by fine, which made me definitely a less afraid person. At the same time I definitely would not go into that cave again. The country I now want to talk about is number 14 in my list, which is Belgium. I've been in the country 4 times now on 4 separate road trips, which were all very close to each other. And it was again a time of frantic traveling, so we visited a lot of places in a very short time. Which means I probably don't have the best in-depth look into like singular places, but I have a very good general perspective of how the architecture in the country looks like, and I'm in love with it, honestly. So in between these road trips, I entered a group on Facebook that focused on urban exploring in Belgium, because I love urban exploring, and I kind of wanted to find out if there's anything we could combine with our regular city exploring. But obviously in these communities people usually don't give you coordinates or tell you where to go. But this one girl told me about a cooling tower and a nuclear power plant you could visit that's closed down. And the pictures I've seen from it were amazing. So we decided to go there, and it turned out that like the day before, 2 days before, they welded in a new door, so we were there just in the wrong time, which was an absolute shame. But then she opted out, instead bringing us to this abandoned church, which was a really cool place. I also have to add the fact that the floor was basically gone and also littered with dead birds. So while I'm not religious, it felt really off to be there, and we didn't spend too much time there before leaving again. Also on another road trip, we went more into urban exploring and visited the small town called Doel. This town was originally meant to be completely bulldozed off to make more space for the channels that come from Antwerp, but that never ever happened. Even though the people got evicted anyway. So now there's just a handful of people living there. Most of the houses are empty and completely decorated with graffiti, which looks very amazing in certain places, but at the same time it's somewhat eerie and also kind of sad if you think about it, because it was a functioning town and still could be a functioning town, but yet it's not. The last thing I need to mention in regards to Belgium is that we had a lot of luck with sunsets. So we basically have this picture, and this picture. It's a chapter in my life that's over with at this point, but I really love to look back on it and look back on the amazing things we've seen and done around these few days where we did those road trips. Now I have a story for you that is maybe somewhat more heavy, which is from the Czech Republic, which is number 9 on my list, so it was very early in my travels. Back then I was already fond of using Couchsurfing, because I feel like, first of all, it gets you connected into a country's culture a lot more. You also often get opportunities to travel to places, or at least information about where to go. And at the same time, I did not have money back in the day, so it helped me in so many ways. I'm so glad that Couchsurfing is a thing. And up until that point, I had no bad experiences with it. And then Prague happened. So there was this guy that agreed to host me in Prague for 2 nights, I think. And once I got to his place, he suddenly told me he's a nudist, which is like, fantastic. Great that it's not in your profile, because it definitely should be, and I most likely would have contacted you. But since I had no other place to stay at, I was just okay. Didn't really know what to say. I definitely didn't want to participate in that, because I don't feel comfortable walking around naked. Even less so around other people. No thank you. I also don't need to see you walking around naked, but at that second I was like, I guess I can live with it, I don't freaking know. Then we had a conversation about what to do the next day together. So he was talking about he wants to go to a lake and go swim. And first of all, I can't swim, and also that's not my thing. If I'm in the country, I want to see places. I prefer to go to awesome landscapes or go explore some towns or stuff like that. Going to a lake, you can mostly do everywhere, and I also can do that back in Germany, which I did let him know. And I guess he accepted that, but also the conversation kind of ended because he had to go to work or something like that. So I went on with my day. Then when I came back in the evening, he first of all was very late, so I sat in front of his door for hours. So he said I have to take a shower, which is alright, like, of course. Now the creepy thing about that, however, is the shower, like the whole bathroom, is opposite of his bedroom. There was no door to the bathroom. There was a doorway, and it was open. And right behind the doorway was literally the shower, which only had like a glass wall. So basically he could look from his bed all the way to whoever's showering. Which didn't make me feel very comfortable there. So like, that was very creepy, very predatory. I'm not trying to accuse him of anything, but also why don't you have a door for your bathroom? Like, that is very questionary. And honestly, I don't even have words for this. I was probably kind of naive, but I was also 19 years old and didn't think too much about the situation at the time. Nothing really happened otherwise. On the next morning I just went on going where I planned to go, only for him to message me an hour later and be like, oh no, you have to leave my house. Which is like, totally fine, I get it, but also can you tell me that before I leave the house so I can take my bags with me before I go on a day trip? Because now I can't go back and pick up my bag. So then he dropped off my bag to a random hotel, which is also very trustworthy of a practice. And then this girl I knew from a random Facebook group had a friend of hers take me in, and that situation was also a mess. I'm not even sure how to describe that. Like, my other options were like pulling an all-nighter in the city center or sleeping on a park bench, and I didn't want to do either of those things, so I ended up staying with him. He barely spoke any English, so we didn't really talk at all. The only thing I learned from him was the fact that he had a broken hand because he slammed it into the wall out of anger. So that also made me feel very comfortable. So in the end, nothing really bad happened, but at the same time I feel like a lot of people might have been scarred by that whole thing happening. And I feel like a lot of people might have dropped out of using Couchsurfing at this point, which would be sad because it's an amazing thing to use. The next country I want to talk about has spot number 28 on my list, which is the Ukraine. Now, I've only spent a few days there and practically went there to visit Chernobyl, which is not as dangerous as it's said to be anymore. Like, the radioactive levels are obviously still there, but being there as a tourist, you're first of all always with a guide, and if you stick to their rules, they have enough security measurements to make sure that you're not taking in radioactivity. You're basically completely fine. You're more in danger with long-haul flights than with actually spending a day or two or even 5 in Chernobyl. So originally we were a group of, I think, 6 people that found each other on Facebook, and we booked 2 days as a group. Now somehow the company messed something up and we suddenly only had 1 day, which meant I had a day extra off that I didn't plan to have. So what I decided to do is visiting the small town of Chernihiv or Chernigov. One of the names is Russian, one is Ukrainian, so it depends how you prefer to call it. So that town was a lot less touristy. It felt a little bit run down, but it also had a certain charm to it, especially because of that. I have so many pictures of different areas of the town that it feels like I've been in 5 towns at once. It's really amazing. The one funny thing that I still have vividly in my mind that happened there, however, was that at the very end of my time there, I went to a monastery. And when I was about to leave, this very old lady started a conversation with me. And at this point, my Russian was first of all not very there yet. And also I'm not even sure if she spoke Russian or Ukrainian, but she kept talking for about 15 minutes, and quite frankly I understood maybe 3% of what she said. So every time she paused, I was hoping that she didn't just ask me a question, because I wouldn't even know what to reply. So all I did was nodding all the time until she ended the conversation and walked away. That was totally not awkward. I'm competent in human conversation, obviously. A country I want to drop in as a fun fact is number 27 on my list, which is Malta. And I'm only mentioning it to say that the country is very, very tiny, yet it has a ton of cities, which are then also tiny. So if you're in one place and you want to visit a certain temple, for example, that is only 10 minutes walking away, you probably end up 2 towns over, because they're all so small and you don't really see where one ends and one starts, which made listing down which places I've been at and which pictures in a very complicated thing to do, if I'm honest. And I also ended up walking to the airport, which was like an hour away, I think, but 5 towns over. So take that as a the more you know kind of act, I guess. So that was this month's grab bag of Storytimes. And I still have a massive list of stories to tell. Some are more shocking, some are more adventurous, some are less spectacular. Please let me know in the comments if you enjoy this type of format or if I should change anything about it. I really appreciate any kind of feedback, because I'm still working out how these types of videos work out best. And I just want to make it as entertaining as possible in a way. Thank you for watching me ramble about random countries I've been to. I would love if you leave a like, and if you enjoy my content, just subscribe and put on the bell notifications. I'm trying to get more active again, posting more things a month. I'm trying to get back on track with like 4 to 6 videos a month, hopefully 6, but I won't promise anything because life is currently weird for everyone, as you may or may not know. That's that, and see you next time, hopefully.